the rundown from WUFT News, exploring our community from top to bottom. I'm Kristen Shermont-Spina. Coming up on the show, several new state laws went into effect on Wednesday. We'll break down a few of them. And later, a fireworks expert tells us what we can expect from WUFT's Fanfares and Fireworks event tomorrow. But first, a couple years ago, 3 communities in Levy County formed a collaborative water and wastewater project. But earlier this year, one town pulled out of the agreement, leaving the other 2 in limbo. I spoke with WUFT's environmental reporter Rose Schnabel about what the project's original goal was and what happens now. First, tell me a little bit about the W3C project and what the original goal of the project was.
W3C stands for Waukesasa Wastewater and Water Cooperative. And the idea was, okay, we have these 3 small towns, Otter Creek, Cedar Key, and Bronson, and they each have different water and wastewater needs. So let's pump out water from Bronson, groundwater, and then transport it via pipeline to those other 2 communities, and then return the wastewater to Bronson to be treated.
Bronson decided recently to leave the cooperative. What was the reason that they gave for doing that?
The people of Bronson and the Bronson Town Council said that they weren't sure if they would get the same benefits from the project that the other 2 communities would. And this is a bit of a thorny topic because according to Florida law, communities don't own the water beneath them that belongs to the state of Florida. But it feels like they do. It feels like they're the ones who are handling this resource and they're the ones stewarding it. So the reason that the town gave is that they weren't sure they would benefit. And these other 2 communities are now looking for someone to either replace Bronson or to move forward as a 2-member cooperative.
Yeah, and the bulk of the project seemed like it hinged on Bronson cooperating. So what are these 2 communities left to do now?
Yeah, the original plan called for the water treatment facility and the wastewater treatment facility both to be located in Bronson. And so now that it's gone, it's up in the air about where can we put these 2 things. So one thing that they've already done is drill what's called a test well. And the test well was basically to say, okay, if we start pumping out groundwater, can this community sustain that? Or will it impact the water table? Will it impact water quality for the residents who already live there? And so that well was already drilled. It cost $400,000, paid for by state funds. And it passed water quality and quantity tests in March, this past March. And so it was good to go. And so now that the project isn't moving forward, that well is kind of in limbo. Bronson can't use it because they're not the ones who paid for it. But this cooperative can't use it because they don't own the land that it sits on. So what they're trying to do now, the cooperative wants to negotiate with Bronson to maybe buy that parcel of land so they could still pump out water and transport it like their plan calls for. Or they need to find a new place entirely to put a test well and then pump out the water from there. And so they haven't decided on other candidates yet for where that could go, but it would still be within the general area of those 3 communities.
And has Bronson leaving the cooperative affected their funding at all?
It's a little bit hard to say. So the governor just vetoed $850,000 that was a line item dedicated to this project that would have gone to the water treatment plant. But we can't say if that was because Bronson left or just because it was a veto that he decided to make. So when I talked to Zim Paget and Sue Colson, who are the chair and vice chair of the group representing Otter Creek and Cedar Key, respectively, they weren't sure. They seem to think that it could impact their funding because they had their plans around Bronson, but only time will tell.
Rose, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
That was WUFT's Rose Schnabel talking with me about the Waukesasa Water and Wastewater Cooperative Project in Levy County. To read the full story, you can visit our website at WUFT.org. If you're just joining us, this is the rundown from WUFT News. I'm Kristen Shermont-Spina. Florida has a lot of stories to tell. Do you know your community's history? It's time for a trivia question. The Florida phosphate boom began in the early 1890s, and by the end of the century, workers swelled the population of Floral City in Citrus County to nearly 10,000 people. This made it larger at the time than what other major Florida city? Was it A, Tampa, B, Jacksonville, or or C, Miami? Stay tuned to the end of the show for the answer. More than 140 laws that passed during this year's legislative session took effect on Wednesday at the start of the new fiscal year. To learn more about a couple of them, I sat down with WFSU state government reporter Tristan Wood.
A big one that's been getting a lot of attention around the state is this AI data center law, right? So it did a host of things. It ensured that local governments have control over the permitting and the placement of data centers in their communities through the comprehensive planning and land development regulation process. It also created guardrails to water use that these data centers can have, and as well as prohibitions on large-scale data centers from offloading their energy costs to consumers by requiring that electric providers have them pay up front for the improvements that they need to the electric grid to allow those data centers to be powered. So the reason why this is so relevant is you're already seeing preemptively local governments up here in North Florida and around the state already talking about putting moratoriums and blocking, prohibiting data centers from being built in their counties and in their cities. So in a lot of those conversations, a lot of them saying, we have to wait to take formal action for these bills to take effect and to see the impact of these of this statewide bill. But local governments around the state are already looking at least pausing, allowing any large-scale data center placement in their county for at least a year or two before more information and more research is widely available about the long-term impacts of placing one of these data centers in their region.
Beyond the data center law, are there any other laws that could impact Floridians and especially Floridians in North Central Florida?
There is one bill that passed that allows the state to label certain groups as domestic terrorist organizations. It opens the door for criminal penalties for members and expulsion of college students who promote those groups. So kind of the background for all of that is Governor Ron DeSantis labeled through executive orders groups like Muslim groups like CARE Florida as domestic terrorist groups, kind of in this conversation about the war in Palestine. The legislation would allow the state to freeze funding. So basically keep any local or state governments from contracting or providing any type of material support to those groups on that list. And it would penalize people who support those organizations. That would include, students that support them could be expelled, and those that are attending on a visa could be reported to ICE. That law is already being roundly opposed by groups like CARE Florida, but so that's one that is to watch going forward. What groups, if any, get placed on that list, and what's their legal response to being placed on that list.
North Central Florida has a lot of agricultural land. What about the farm bill that recently passed?
It's wide-reaching with many parts, and several of them are very interesting. There is a provision that bans cities and counties from outlawing gas-powered equipment, such as like leaf blowers and other lawn maintenance care. I find it interesting that choice of tool has become kind of like a touch point as to protect consumers' access to gas-powered tools. But there was other more impactful ones, elements of the bill. A big one is a part that sets density requirements for developers who seek to build in about 100 or so small municipalities in Florida. It limits development in those small cities to 1 unit per 20 acres, eventually to set a density cap on these small municipalities to keep them small and prevent them from seeing like rapid, quick development that you've seen in other areas of the state, especially in North Central Florida, where you're located.
That was state government reporter Tristan Wood talking about some of the new laws that went into effect on July 1st. Just after we recorded this interview, Governor Ron DeSantis' office sent a press release clarifying the state's intent to designate multiple groups as domestic terrorist organizations, including the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CARE. This is the rundown from WUFT News. I'm Kristen Shermont-Spina. Coming up on the show, this summer we're bringing back our special series called Uncelebrated, People Who Fly Under the Radar Yet Help Our World Turn. That's after a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Rundown. I'm Kristen Shermont-Spina. So if you were visiting almost any college campus this summer, you'd noticed one thing: tumbleweeds. Okay, not actual ones, but things on campus are slower. University of Florida students and our student reporters are working or at internships. Whatever it is, we hope they're helping someone in some way this summer. But that got us thinking about our now award-winning Uncelebrated series from late last year. These are stories about people who fly under the radar but keep the world turning. The Public Media Journalists Association named it the best student program in America in 2026. So we thought we'd like to visit that series again during these slower summer months. We'll begin with WUFT's Krista Jensen, introducing us to a person whose work is very appreciated and widely known, and yet they themselves work quietly in the background.
My name is Hella Scholl, and I'm a volunteer at the Kanapahawk Botanical Garden. And most of the time, my volunteer time is spent pulling weeds among all the lovely flowers and plants. How long have I been gardening for? I would say most of my life, because growing up we had a garden out of necessity. So I learned from my mother, and wherever I have lived, I've always grown things. My main reason for volunteering at the Botanical Garden is because I enjoy the garden itself. I want it to thrive. I want the community to enjoy it. And while I'm not a botanist, I cannot help in the planting aspect of it, but I can help in maintaining the garden by keeping it free of weeds, debris, and just make it enjoyable for all the people who come through. A weed is a plant in the wrong place. In this case, a plant becomes a weed when it's not being planted in a particular location. And we have to remove it because it interferes with the display of the plants. This is mondo grass. It's very delicate, very fine. This is a palm. It's very coarse in comparison. So it stands out in among the mondo grass, which is low and gentle. There's another one. These are definitely weeds, per se. This is a kind of a maple, but it doesn't belong here, so it gets removed. I would describe myself as a plant lover from A to Z. I like seeing them, smelling them, growing them, watching them grow, watching them through the season, how they go from sticks to being beautiful flowers, and then back to being sticks. I would say my most favorite plant is an artichoke, because in appearance it's a large plant, bright green. It has very menacing leaves, but they're not sharp. And the flower is the most gorgeous flower. It's a big thistle, and the flower is like a big globe of purple. And it's just an absolutely fabulous looking plant. Part of the reason that I volunteer at the garden is simply because I enjoy the garden, and I hope other people enjoy the garden. And by keeping it clean and neat and tidy, they can also enjoy the garden. So I share in their joy of seeing the flowers and seeing the plants and hearing the birds and especially owls sometimes. Just the peacefulness of it is worthwhile.
That was Hella Scholl. She's a volunteer gardener at Kanapahawk Botanical Gardens. Her story is part of our series Uncelebrated, People Who Fly Under the Radar Yet Help Our World Turn. The story was produced by WUFT's Krista Jensen. If you're just joining us, this is The Rundown from WUFT News. I'm Kristen Shermont-Spina. As a reminder, our trivia question this week: the Florida phosphate boom began in the early 1890s, and by the end of the century, workers swelled the population of Floral City in Citrus County to nearly 10,000 people. This made it larger at the time than what other major Florida city? Was it A, Tampa, B, Jacksonville, or C, Miami? The answer's coming up at the end of the show. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Rundown. I'm Kristen Schiermont-Spina. In Gainesville, WUFT and the University of Florida is hosting its annual Fanfares and Fireworks show tomorrow night. It's the culmination of many months of behind-the-scenes work. John Cassie is the co-owner of the company in charge of fireworks for the event. WUFT's Emiliano Luna spoke with him earlier and began by asking what the community can expect.
We're going to try to emphasize for sure two things. One will be, red, white, and blue, hopefully for the 4th of July and the 250th, and also a lot of noise. I sell personally what they're called salutes, and that's the big booms. So there'll be hopefully a lot of those, and then just various other things. We may shoot a new shell called the alley shell, which actually breaks out into about 5 different comets and then opens up again at the end.
What goes on behind the scenes that people might not usually appreciate for an event like this? People don't understand, I think, that basically for every minute or two you have in a show, people put in at least an hour or two, a minute per minute because of preparation and getting the show in order and deciding what you're going to do and all those kind of things. So there's a lot of preparation that goes into a show that may last like this 15 minutes or so. Do you get tired of fireworks? Like, you see them probably so often.
You get tired of all the work that goes into it, but you don't get tired of the actual shows normally. I mean, there's always a feeling of, accomplishment, let's say, or satisfaction after the show, when the show is over and you hear people, the crowd clapping, cheering, or what have you. But yeah, it can get a little tiresome. And after a while, you're, like you say, if I see fireworks every weekend for 4 or 5 weeks in a row, it can actually get a little bit of tiring of fireworks, believe it or not.
What's your best memory from setting up, shows over the years?
We had a gentleman who loved fireworks, and he passed away, and we kind of did a fireworks show for him specifically. And then, believe this or not, I don't know, this might sound crazy to you, but we actually put some of his ashes in the fireworks and shot them up in the air. And so that was actually quite memorable. But we're not the only one. I've heard people do that quite a bit over the years.
So yeah, I guess just after 20 years of doing the show and just working with fireworks, what kind of keeps you going and excites you about it?
After it's over, or during, and then at the end afterwards, the feeling of if you've made people happy, and they've at least had a good time, happy time, and everything, to hear people either clap or cheer, or just to know that that it went well. That would keep you going, even though you're tired as can be. I jokingly, I always say to people, my favorite day of the year is July the 5th, because that means the season is over. So anyway, and then you just have to wait till the next 4th of July.
That was John Cassie, one of the main forces behind WUFT's Fanfares and Fireworks show. That will kick off tomorrow night at UF's Flavitt Field. Cassie was speaking there with WUFT's Emiliano Luna. Before we end the show today, we have another edition of Bird Note. It's a nonprofit independent media production that encourages you to escape the daily grind and immerse yourself in the natural world. Today's episode is about an iconic national symbol, the bald eagle.
This is Bird Note. Look high into the top branches of a tall tree, and you may see the source of this call, a bald eagle. Yes, that squeaky door sound comes from the official bird of the United States of America. Sitting about 3 feet tall, this majestic bird has a wingspan of more than 6 feet. Stretch your arms as far as you can, and imagine a bird whose reach is even greater. Mature bald eagles have snowy white heads and tails, and powerful dark brown bodies. Their eyes, beaks, and taloned feet are shades of bright orange and yellow. Immature bald eagles, on the other hand, look so different that early ornithologists thought they were another species entirely. Young bald eagles are a patchwork of dark mottled colors, and their eyes, feet, and beaks are drabber shades of gray, brown, and yellow. It can take young eagles up to 4 years before they grow into their iconic adult colors. Even with a call that sounds like a rusty gate, the bald eagle is lord of the landscape.
That was Bird Note, a nonprofit independent media production that inspires listeners to care about the natural world and take steps to protect it. The Rundown is a production of WUFT News out of the University of Florida College of Journalism and Communications. The team that made the show possible this week includes Dave Barriswain, Dana Hill, Rose Schnabel, Tristan Wood, Krista Jensen, and Emiliano Luna. Special thanks to the Dean of the College, Hub Brown, and Newsroom Director Ethan Majock. Our trivia question this week was, the Florida phosphate boom began in the early 1890s, and by the end of the century, workers swelled the population of Floral City in Citrus County to nearly 10,000 people. This made it larger at the time than what other major Florida city? Was it A, Tampa, B, Jacksonville, or C, Miami? The answer? C, Miami. The city of Miami wasn't officially formed until 1896, and during the 1900 census, it only had just over 1,600 residents. As one of the oldest and most distinct settlements in Citrus County, the Floral City Historical District was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1993. That's it for the Rundown. I'm Kristen Shermont Spina.